On today's show, the Atlanta Hawks introduce their draft picks headlined by number one overall pick Zaccharie Risacher, and the latest on the Summer League schedule, and much, much more, and all of that is coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1752 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Friday afternoon, post-draft, before free agency. A lot going on here at the end of June. Today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at the Gametime app. Download the Gametime app right now, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And I also want to encourage you, as I always do on the podcast, to make us your first listen each and every day. Please search Locked On Hawks or just find us on Spotify or Apple or Overcast. If you are watching on YouTube, thank you for being there as well. Please like this episode and all of the episodes, plus subscribe to the show on that platform. It's been very busy in recent days, as you might expect, around the NBA draft. This is our sixth show of the week already, full coverage of the draft after both nights on Wednesday and on Thursday. Those episodes are still very relevant at this point in time. My scouting report thoughts on Risacher and Djurišić, etc. But we'll spend a lot of time on the show today on the intro press conference, which actually took place on Friday morning of Risacher and Djurišić, who the Hawks, of course, acquired in the deal involving AJ Griffin yesterday. And then later on in the podcast, we'll touch on some roster decisions the Hawks have to make in the coming hours, basically, in advance of Saturday. And then also the Summer League schedule was announced on Friday as well, which is very intriguing for those of us trying to keep an eye on the draft picks of young guys out in Las Vegas. But at the top of the podcast, most of the folks will be on the press conference. So the full video, it's about 30 minutes long. I'm not going to play that for you now. It was streamed on Hawks.com. It's available a few different places I found already on YouTube, etc. So I want to curate it a little bit, not just share the entire thing. But there is some interesting video/audio with you that I can share with you, I should say, at the top of the podcast. As this, of course, is always a big event when the press conference takes place of the draft picks, and even bigger, as you might imagine, for the number one overall player in a class. First, I'll begin with Landry Fields' opening statement. After a tee-up from Bob Rathbun, here's Landry, and the first thing he had to say to the crowd.
No, thank you, Bob, and thank you everyone that's here today. As you mentioned, this is quite an exciting time. I was actually talking with these guys backstage. I'm like, have you ever seen or been a part of a press conference this large? And they both said no. So I was like, it's okay. Just breathe, get some oxygen to your brains. You'll be just fine. Just punt to me if you get confused on anything. But I know they'll do well. And I think that the energy that I had been describing early on this process is still palpable today. I think it's very rare when you identify players in a specific draft that you can actually go and get guys that you identify as our guys that have Hawks DNA and are committed to excellence and committed to their own development here. And that's something that's crucial for us at the end of the day. So when we identified these guys, we knew we had to have them, and that's what we did. We went to go get them. So couldn't be more thrilled to welcome them here to Atlanta, them, their families, their agencies, and continue to grow together as we continue to build out here things for the Hawks.
So you hear that there, obviously in the beginning portions of this press conference, the headliner, I would say news-wise, is that he said on the record that the Hawks were narrowed down to two players before drafting Risacher in the final day. I'm not 100% sure on this, but of course, Woj reported in the hour or so before the draft that it was Reed Sheppard in sort of in contention, I should say, for the Hawks out of Kentucky, who ended up with the Houston Rockets. I heard that was probably going to be the case as far as the other guy in contention. It theoretically could have been Donovan Clingan, who the Hawks liked throughout the process. Alex Sarr was basically crossed off the radar by that point in time, but notable, even if it doesn't really matter at this point in time. Risacher, by the way, said he did not know he was actually going to be the pick until his name was called. I'm not sure that's the case, but certainly intrigue there, kind of adds to the mystique of how long the Hawks waited to decide on this draft pick. Anyway, from there, Landry got a question about kind of the process in trading AJ Griffin and also nabbing Djurišić in the second round on Thursday. Here's what I have to say about that.
Through this process and acquiring Nico, we had to move away from a really tremendous player for us and a tremendous human being in AJ Griffin. And just want to take a moment to thank him for the time that he has spent here and the amount of work that he's put in over time. And, it came down to us trying to figure out what was the best decision for our franchise. And going into the last day, we didn't have a second round pick. And we knew it would cost us something if we wanted to get a guy that we identified would really be good for us long term. So called a number of teams to try to get a pick. Ultimately landed with Houston, but it was gonna cost us a really good player in AJ. But at the end of the day, that's what we decided felt was best for us. So went to go get one of our guys in the draft. So that's how it came about.
In kind of a smaller scrum after the big press conference, Fields talked to sort of a handful of us, I would say, about some other stuff on the record. And he said that he reiterated his thanks again for AJ Griffin. Also said that in talking to AJ and his camp, they were both understanding and also be excited to be in Houston. So that's kind of what you say, but I thought it was at least good that Landry started off without being asked. I think he would have been asked by me or somebody else about AJ, but he kind of opened up with that and thanking AJ, et cetera, and going into some of the process along the way. I actually asked a question near the end of the press conference about basically the general vibe of the NBA right now being very heavily emphasized on wing players and the value of two-way wings, et cetera. Here's the question and what Landry had to say in response.
Obviously, you drafted a couple of wings, perimeter guys. There's lots of talk around the league about the premium placed on wing players and versatility. How do you sort of view your mindset in, targeting these two players and how that fits into the overall emphasis on those wing players?
Yeah, I mean, regardless of position, these guys compete. And, what we, amongst many things, like their IQ for the game, I think playing with this team and playing under head coach Quinn Snyder, it's going to take a level of IQ to pick up things that we want to do. The creativity that he and the coaching staff, they do a tremendous job with our guys. So in order to best serve them and set us up for success, we have to have players that are going to be able to kind of follow along and be able to read, respond. And whether that comes from point guards or wings or bigs, it's always going to be the case. And for these guys, just playing at that wing position with the athleticism scores that they have and the size that they have and just the different components about their games, the versatility, that gives us a really nice canvas for our group and allows our coaches something really fun to work with.
And at the very end of the press conference, Lauren Williams of the AJC asked a question to Landry about kind of the culture stuff that they were valuing with these players and how they might sort of impact what the Hawks are doing organizationally. And here's what Landry had to say.
Landry, if I could ask, how do you believe that both Zaccharie and Nikola represent the culture of this team and what you guys are hoping to build of the culture moving forward?
Well, when we start off, even before this draft, we identify key elements and we have our assessments, and we have a number of different criteria that we look into for each player that we bring into Atlanta. So, as I said before, I think our group did a tremendous job, and we take all of those assessments and we come to the table and we have our discussions and debates and ideas, and that's how we do things. So, leaning more into that and watching that evolve over time. The more we learn about this game, the more we learn as a staff. That process will get more and more refined going into next draft period. So I would hope that even as we get closer, just the character of our group, our process will continuously get better.
All right, that's the end of the video portion, but a couple of other smaller notes here before we go to a break, and then more of the insight from behind the scenes. Risacher is going to be wearing number 10, according to what he was holding up today, and Djurišić number 7 on his jersey for photos and things like that. So once the photos are taken, that's probably going to be their number moving forward, but nothing is exactly assigned at this point in time, I don't think. Alas, I thought the vibe was pretty normal around this. Obviously excited. Landry was upbeat. The players were. I thought in particular, Djurišić was pretty entertaining, as Risacher. Fun guys for sure. Lots of questions in French for Zach. Oh, by the way, I believe it was Charles Odom of the AP passed this along, that Risacher is the shorthand spelling of Zaccharie that he goes with is Zacch. So a little bit of a different spelling of that than you might expect. But anyway, a fun morning. And by the way, I'll have a little bit more of the post availability when it comes to some audio from Landry in the smaller scrum in a second. But first, a word from our partners on today's podcast. Today's show is brought to you by the Gametime app. And Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace at the NBA that makes getting tickets faster and easier for you across the board. They have killer last-minute deals. They have all-in prices, views from receipts, and the lowest possible price guarantee. Makes them a fantastic option for all things tickets. I've been a regular user of Gametime for quite some time now. It's really come in handy for me in the past with Braves tickets and Falcons tickets, United tickets, as well as other shows and concerts across the city and really the entire country. Save big when buying last minute tickets on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. They have flash deals to save even more, and also save even more when you choose a section, and Gametime will actually choose the seats for you within that section for a discount. Also, they have an awesome feature where you can toggle up front to show the full price, the all-in price at the end without actually having that surprise nuisance stuff at the end of the process. Also get a panoramic view of your seats in the app before you buy them, and you are also getting lowest price guarantee with the folks at Gametime. Take all of the guesswork of buying tickets out of the mix. No more guesswork with the folks at Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account and do that promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, and as I alluded to before the break, there was a bit of a smaller scrum with a handful of reporters, including me and Laura Williams, Kevin Chenard, etc. Afterwards, it was only fairly short, but no drama here whatsoever. But I got questions about this. Both Risacher and Djurišić are going to be playing in Summer League. Landry confirmed that. No hesitation there. So no surprise. Most draft picks do, but notable there. He did not say, as we'll get into later on, how long they're going to play, in particular Risacher, but we'll cover that bridge when we get to it. There was a little bit of a longer audio clip I wanted to play for you because it was kind of a lot of process questions about the Griffin trade and also the process of adding Djurišić to the mix and having him kind of be the target. This is going to include audio from Laura Williams, her questions, also my follow-ups, etc. And here is that entire exchange with Landry.
As far as what you guys are assessing of Nikola and what are you looking for that might ultimately help him make the roster? Because there are options that you guys can do, whether it's send him to the G League or have him stay overseas and work out there and evaluate him over time.
Right, yeah. We're gonna continue to talk about that. We'll get him here working out through Summer League and whatnot. But we're excited about him as a player. He does bring a lot of versatility, and he's tough. Has an IQ for the game. When he mentioned that pass first, he sees the floor, and at that size, I hope he was bigger than me. He told me he was, just standing up there. But on paper he is. That's something that gets us excited. So more size to our group is good.
Is there any chance that he could be stashed overseas for a year? Is that even on the table at all? Is there discussions about that?
We'll see. We have to nail in our stashing process just in general. We haven't done too many of those. But we kind of all options are on the table. But no, we're pretty high on it. We'll see how that ends up.
When you were targeting a second-round pick, AJ, was it Nikola you were looking at the entire time, or was it the guy?
Yeah, we had a really high grade on him. So after that first day, and sort of the beauty of the 2 days is it gives you some chances to go back as a group and recalibrate. And started hammering out phone calls, and as we all learned, there was so much movement going on, and we knew teams were willing to give up their second-round picks. So when we saw that he was still available, it was a guy we went to go get.
During the full presser, actually, Landry talked about the opportunity and using the resources from ownership to add cash to go up one spot. I noted this yesterday, but it's actually notable when the Hawks use money and not take money, not sell a pick, but rather not buy a pick, but certainly use money to go up a spot in the draft. That was a nice thing to see if you are a Hawks fan, I think. Landry also emphasized, as he usually does, but still notable, that he talked about shooting and defense as priorities in the organization, what they're trying to do with their roster, draft picks, etc. And then also I wanted to pass along this. He was actually asked about Risacher's role and the ability for him to be an impact player as soon as his rookie season. And here's what Landry responded with.
To be an impact player, that's the hope for all of our guys. And with him specifically, we feel like he can do that. I mentioned before the size and the shooting and the defensive versatility that he has. He has a great foundation for success. And playing as long as he had before this in a pro league, he has those pro habits as well. So always going to be some development for our guys. But for him, the floor that he has right now is really good.
All right, that's all for the press conference. There is more to talk about on today's podcast, though, including some Summer League stuff and some contractual decision-making, I would say, for Saturday. But before we get to that, actually a little bit of a sparkler of reporting that came along on Friday from Jake Fisher of Yahoo. Jake's been on this podcast before. He reported that about Brandon Ingram. Basically, there's been some talks, rumblings there on Twitter about Ingram interest for quite some time for the Hawks. But Jake wrote the following on Friday, quote, "Atlanta is another popular landing spot league figures have pointed to for Brandon Ingram, but there have been no substantive talks between the Hawks and the Pelicans," end quote. That's notable for sure. I would say this does not rule out Ingram whatsoever. I'm not picking on Jake, but nothing concrete there as to say that it couldn't happen between the two sides, nor does it rule out a DeJounte Murray New Orleans trade, because I continue to hear things behind the scenes about DeJounte and New Orleans as a potential partnership. Again, nothing like reportable, but it's kind of just been out there. You never know how serious this stuff is, but stuff tends to kind of go in waves. And I will say this, it does not have to be Brandon Ingram to send DeJounte to New Orleans. There were talks between the Hawks and Pelicans back in February about DeJounte without Ingram as a part of the mix in that, I won't go into the names, but for instance, Dyson Daniels is a guy the Hawks have been reported to want, or at least have interest in. Larry Nance is a good salary filler kind of thing. You got, I don't think they're going to be trading Trey Murphy, but Herb Jones has been talked about. I think the Pelicans would rather keep Herb Jones. But anyway, there is a way to do it without Ingram, but that's where we are right now. People are asking about that take because Jake reported that. Nothing shocking, but that is the latest on that front, and nothing huge beyond that in the trade rumor mill as I record this on Friday afternoon, but things can change very fast this time of year, which is why I'm posting this podcast as soon as I can on Friday. Okay, we'll have more, but first, a word from our partners on the podcast. All right, before I get out of here, the Summer League schedule was announced. It was kind of hilarious, actually. It was breaking just as Bob Rathman was taking his MC post on the stage on Friday morning. So I was actually able to find that and get it out to the people before Zaccharie Risacher and Landry Fields start talking. But the headliner is that the schedule is full of Hawks, as you might expect, and they have some prominent spots. I teased this before, but number one overall picks usually have prominent spots. That's what happens, and that's going to be the case here. The first game, and by far the most anticipated game, I would say, is going to be Friday, July 12th. That's the first day of Summer League. It's 2 weeks from today as I'm recording this podcast, and it's going to be Hawks versus Wizards, 9:30 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN. And Hawks versus Wizards is also Risacher versus Alex Sarr. And all the drama around Alex Sarr and not working out, that'll be played up, I'm sure, on the broadcast. The NBA pretty much always puts a 1 versus 2 or a 1 versus 3 or both on the schedule, and that was always going to be coming, I think, but that's happening on that first day in prime time. Then the Hawks play the Spurs, actually, on Sunday. So they have a day off on Saturday. They play on Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern time against the Spurs. The Spurs, of course, lots of talk there about trade stuff. There was the big deal with DeJounte, and then also they have Steph Castle, who's the number 4 overall pick in the draft. So that'll be an interesting kind of storyline fest, I would imagine. And then they have 2 days off, Monday and Tuesday, and the Hawks play on Wednesday, July 17th, against the Lakers. That's a 9:30 p.m. Eastern time game. Obviously, there's some intrigue with Dalton Knecht, who was a potential top 10 pick that slipped all the way to 17 to the Lakers. And, of course, the more casual, broad interest in Bronny James, who I expect to play Summer League, and that'll be interesting as well. So not a top draft pick on that team, but the Lakers, if you've ever been to Las Vegas for Summer League, you would probably know this. But if not, Lakers fans tend to overrun Summer League because it's not that far from LA. So it'll be a lot of Lakers fans and Bronny and Knecht, and, of course, the Hawks guys as well. And then the finale of the 4-game schedule for the Hawks is Friday, July 19th, so 3 weeks from today, at 6 o'clock Eastern time against Modest Buzelis and the Bulls. That's probably the least attractive matchup, but still, Modest is a real prospect at the same position as Risacher, so notable there. They'll play at least one more game, either on Saturday the 20th or Sunday the 21st. TBD on when that's going to be, because that actually has to do with how you perform before then and the playoffs and all that stuff. All 4 of these scheduled games are actually going to be in Thomas and Mack, which is the big arena in Las Vegas. The other one is Cox Pavilion. It's much smaller. The Hawks are often in the smaller arena. Not this time, though. The power of the number one overall pick takes them to the big arena and easier to find seats if you are there for sure. By the way, every game of Summer League, Hawks or otherwise, is either on ESPN, ESPN2, ESPNU, or NBA TV, so relatively easy to find those. And obviously, full steam ahead there. We'll see what happens there on the roster. People ask about that. What we know right now, roster-wise, just to say this out loud on June 28th, is Risacher, Djurišić, Kobe Buffkin, Mo Gay, and Dylan Windler. I would say TBD on other guys. Maybe Seth Lundy will be there, but he's hurt. I shouldn't say that. He won't be playing. He's injured. He's not going to play till training camp. But you could see other familiar names. You could see not familiar names. You could see guys from college ranks. TBD, but we know a handful of guys. Of course, Risacher is the headliner, but especially there'll be a lot of interest in Kobe and Mo as returners to Summer League, and stay tuned for all of that. I'll have full coverage from Las Vegas in a couple of weeks. Last thing before we get out of here on this Friday afternoon. The Hawks have some roster decisions financially, contractually to make by Saturday. June 29th is a big day for decisions around the league, but also for the Hawks. there are three qualifying offer decisions, and then there are 2 options / guarantees. So Saddiq Bey, Vit Krejci, and Seth Lundy all have to have qualifying offers tendered to them by Saturday, or they become unrestricted free agents. Keep that in mind. So it's either you offer the qualifying offer or you don't have restrictions on those free agents. The one, Bey is the one that's very interesting, I would say. It's a little bit more than $8.4 million. The Hawks could offer that, but it's not a no-brainer that they do. That's real money for him. And by the way, just as a reminder, Saddiq is injured, torn ACL. He will not be able to play in October. We'll see when he can come back, but that's a factor here for sure. That's also a real allotment of money for Saddiq. Vit's an absolute lock, I would say, to have a qualifying offer. And for Vit Krejci and Seth Lundy, the qualifying offer is only another 2-way contract. Now, I expect, I'm not saying for sure, but I expect Vit Krejci to be on a full NBA contract, but they have to find that extension, or no, it won't be extension, find that new contract to be a free agent no matter what at this point. But restricted probably, and then we'll see what they actually land on there. Seth Lundy, again, hurt right now, 2nd-round pick from last year. I like Seth a lot. I think they probably will tender him the offer of a 2-way, but we'll see on that front. And then lastly, you have Garrison Mathews and Bruno Fernando. So Garrison has a team option that is also non-guaranteed. So it's about $2.2 million. It's a team option. They have to decide by Saturday, but it's also still non-guaranteed through June 10th. So, sorry, not June 10th, January 10th. So I say that it'd be pretty surprising to me if they did not pick up that team option, because even if they don't want to keep Garrison, by the way, for me, I would want to keep Garrison on that contract. He was pretty good this year. That's very cheap. But even if they weren't in love with Garrison, picking it up is the right move because it's still non-guaranteed. You can cut him later if you wanted to. So that one should be pretty easy, I think, but we'll see. Bruno, not quite as cut and dry. It's about $500,000 more, about $2.7 million for Bruno. And that's a little bit more than $500,000 more than the minimum as well. Now, I think Bruno is worth this contract. It's not crazy to have him pick it up as far as the guarantee, but he becomes guaranteed for the rest of the season right away, which you could trade him or whatever if you wanted to, but that's a no-brainer. If the Hawks did not guarantee Bruno, I wouldn't be stunned. We'll see at this point in time. It'll depend on roster spots and what their plan is at center overall. I think Bruno is a solid 3rd center to have around, a guy that everybody likes as well, which definitely helps at the end of your bench. So keep that in mind, but some decisions to make. And again, those are all due on Saturday. So we'll have some news either way on some of these things by the end of Saturday, and we'll have more podcast content at the end of the weekend about some of that and anything else. We are firmly in the time right now where stuff could be happening trade-wise. Nothing yet. It's Friday afternoon as I'm recording this podcast, but I'll be on call. Could have episodes around, across the weekend, but at the very latest, I'll be back probably on Sunday because free agency opens, as a reminder, on Sunday evening, 6 o'clock, and I'll have sort of a preview of that probably at some point over the weekend as well. The Hawks are not like a prime free agency team because they don't have cap space, but they do have exceptions to use, and we'll see what actually happens along that front. I'll get out of here today on a shorter podcast, but hopefully you enjoy a look behind the curtain when it comes to the press conference on Friday morning, and definitely recommend listening to all of the content with regard to the draft stuff, reactions to Risacher, scouting reports. By the way, all of the pre-draft stuff is very relevant too, because we talked about Risacher with a lot of different guests over the last month plus, and then the show yesterday about the AJ Griffin trade and Djurišić, etc. All that is very relevant. Please subscribe to the podcast anywhere you might find your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, please go ahead and like this episode of the show and also subscribe to the podcast. It definitely helps us to grow the product. Please leave 5-star ratings and reviews. Follow us on Twitter/X at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there at BT Rowland. I appreciate everyone listening to the podcast. Enjoy your weekend. And we'll be back pretty soon, I'd imagine, but no matter what, in the next couple of days. We'll see you all next time.